When you check into a hotel and you present your ID, do you ever think that you're giving away far more personal information than necessary? The hotel only wants to prove your identity, but now they also know your age, weight, home address, driver's license number, and more. As soon as you hand it over, you lose control. We're often asked to give away too much of our private data. Once it's out of your hands, that information can become susceptible to hacking, the sale of your personal data, or a barrage of unwanted ads. But what if there was an option to verify your personal information without giving away unnecessary, critical, private details? Verifiable Credentials, a pillar of Web5, solves this. There are digital certificates of claims that are easily shared in a private and secure way. They can prove your legal name, age, ownership of an asset, or anything really. Verifiable Credentials limit the amount of data you share to only what's required, and they can't be tampered with or faked. Let's reimagine how identification could work. With Web5, the government issues a verifiable credential that proves your identity and lives in what we call an identity wallet. So now when you check into the hotel, you present the front desk with a verifiable credential and share only what the hotel needs. This establishes that you are who you say you are, without giving away more personal information than you'd like. Verifiable credentials make proving claims easier, more private, and more secure.
Hello, everybody. So welcome to Show and Tell, a live stream where the TBD team shows and tells you about the latest, greatest open source project or concept here at TBD, because we love being open about what we're working on. So during the show, whether you're on Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, or in our Discord, you can drop any questions or comments that you have in the chat, and we will answer them in the second portion of the show. I am your host and moderator, Tania, Technical Community Manager here at TBD. And joining us as our speaker for the day is Ebony.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ebony. I'm the developer advocate at TBD. And I'm so excited to do this live show.
So excited for today's show. So we can go ahead and get started straight away. So take it away.
I noticed some people have answered where they're tuning in from. We have like Nigeria. I'm in Boston. Where are you tuning in from, Tania? New York?
New York, Queens, New York specifically.
Ooh. All right, guys, I'm ready to get started whenever you're ready, Tania.
I'm ready.
Share the slide. Okay, cool. Okay, guys, so today we're going to be talking about presentation exchange, which is essentially just the way you would share or exchange your verifiable credentials with another party, person, lender, verifier, etc. Next slide. So today I'm going to show you guys like the agenda, what we're going to go over. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what are verifiable credentials, the importance of presentation exchange, presentation exchange roles, what is presentation definition, and I'll get into like why that's relevant, and then the flow of the exchange, and then we'll get into the code and see how you guys can do it yourselves. And then obviously we'll do like questions at the end. Next. Okay, so verifiable credentials are essentially just a set of claims that are cryptographically signed, and this makes sure that they're tamper evident. And some examples of verifiable credentials, since they're literally just claims, would be like I could issue myself a verifiable credential. So I'm obsessed with pasta, and I could say that I am like certified the best pasta maker in North America, whatever. And yeah, I can say that. But the thing about verifiable credentials are there is this trust layer baked into them. So even though I issue myself a verifiable credential, it'll hold more weight if like a renowned chef in Italy issued the credential saying that I'm the best pasta maker. So they're essentially just claims that are certified. And some examples would be like a passport. So like how it has your date of birth in it, it has your name, your address. And this would be like, there's a trust layer with this one because of who issued it. So for me, it'd be the United States for my passport. Another example would be like your diploma. So when you graduate, whether it's like a boot camp or an actual university, and you get that certification, I know back in the day we would like hang it and frame it and be like, look at me, I'm so smart. But with verifiable credentials, you can literally have it in your phone and you could still show it off, show the world, like I did that, you know? Another example that we've kind of like talked about is potentially background checks, like a background check company creating verifiable credentials for you. So let's say they expire every like 4 months or so. That's probably too long because you guys might be a little like criminals or whatever. So maybe 4 months is too long. We'll do like every month or 2 months. It lasts like 2 months. So say you get one job, maybe you want to get another job or you want to leave that job. And you know, like for me at least, when I apply to a job, the waiting period for my background check, I always get so nervous. Like I start sweating, I'm hyperventilating, and I know I don't have anything in my background. Like there's no criminal record, but for some reason I'm like, in my sleep, did I commit a crime? Like, I don't know. So if this was a thing, if background check companies or agencies decided to do verifiable credentials, it would speed up that process immensely. Like right away, it would say she's good. This is where she graduated from. These are her past experiences. Hire her. Next slide, please. So another example, I wanted to like show you guys examples that are happening right now, as opposed to just kind of like the examples I talked about, like the what ifs. So right now, one example that I think is really, really cool is Adobe. They have like these content credentials. And with content creation being just massive, like it's a massive field right now, I feel like this is genius. So when you take a picture or if you edit a picture, like you'll have that verifiable credential that says like, this is my photo. And with like plagiarism, people taking your pictures and like repurposing your content, I feel like this is genius. Another example that's currently out are mobile driver's license. And some of you guys, if you do have one, like feel free to add it in the chat. I'm in Massachusetts, so we sadly don't have that yet, at least not that I know of. But I know in Louisiana, they have like this LA wallet. And inside of it, they have a verifiable credential for their mobile driver's license, which I think is really, really, really cool. So say you go out one night with your friends and you go to the bar and you forget your ID, but like it's fine because it's on your phone. And most times nobody forgets their phone. Well, most times. Sometimes I've done that, but next slide, please. Okay, so now I want to get into an actual example of a verifiable credential, just so you can see, because we're going to talk about the exchange of these credentials. So I want to show you guys an example, and I'm really going to just focus on the highlighted part with credential subject. So under that, the DID is like, this is my decentralized identifier. This says that this credential was issued to me, and the claims are the ones that are highlighted. So this credential is an employment credential. So it says that I'm a software developer. I started on this date, and my employment status is I'm a contractor. So these are all the claims that are issued to me in this verifiable credential. And I'm going to show you guys in the code, because this format and this JSON is not actually how you would share or house or store your verifiable credential. It would be a JSON web token. And I'll get a little more into that later. But this is at least what these credentials are that we're sharing. And these are the claims that are highlighted. Next one, please, Tania. Okay, so I wanted to like go into like some important or exciting parts of presentation exchange. And one important feature of it is that it's privacy preserving. So you only have to share what's necessary. And I think this is a really cool feature because, and I always go back to like bar things because I think it's just super relatable. Like when you go to the bar or when you're even trying to get into a club or something and you have to show your ID to the bouncer, like the bouncer now knows your address, your eye color, your height, like all your weight, I think is on there. I don't even know. All your personal information, and that's just not necessary. So with presentation exchange, whatever another party is asking for, that's all you have to share with them. You don't have to share anything else. Like all you need to know is if I'm over 21, and that's all they'll see. So I think that's a really cool feature. To kind of piggyback on that, I feel like presentation exchange, it empowers users because we now have the ability to manage our credentials via a wallet. So it's like I have all my credentials, everything about me, I own it, I have it, and then I delegate like who I'm sharing it to, and my wallet will normally do that for me. And then it has security baked into it because as I said before, verifiable credentials, they're cryptographically signed, which makes them tamper evident. And the same thing with presentation exchange. It's also signed. So that presentation of those verifiable credentials that you share, it's secure. And then just another cool one is that we have an SDK that I'm going to go into that just makes it a little easier for us to be able to go through this process without having to code too much. You know what I mean? Like it extracts all the nitty gritty parts of it. Next, please. Thanks, Tanya. Okay, so I want to show you guys high level like roles that are part of presentation exchange. So the wallet, which is essentially like you control your wallet. So you have your wallet and you're the holder of those VCs. And then you have a presentation requester and a verifier. Most times the presentation requester is the same as the verifier. An example I could think of where maybe it's different is maybe we're going to have like verification companies. Same way we have like background check companies where I'm applying for this loan through this bank, but they have their own verification company and they actually like verify it once I give my presentation to the lender, to the bank, you know? Next one, please. Okay, so let's get into presentation definition. So the role of the presentation requester, they're like requesting these verifiable credentials from you. And in order to request that, they give you a presentation definition. And I think of a presentation definition as like a shopping list of expected claims. Like it's very specific. These are the things I'm looking for. Like when you go to the store, when you send your boyfriend to the store and you know, sometimes men don't get what you want them to get. So you have like the little pictures of like, I want this box of cereal, or I want this flour, and I want it to be this exact brand, exact pounds, like all of that. So that's essentially what presentation definition is. It lays out the claims that I want. So I want these credentials from you that have this information, your name, your date of birth, whatever it could be, where you graduated from. I just need your verifiable credentials to be able to answer these questions for me or have all these claims in it for me. Next one, please. Okay, so this is a mini example of a presentation definition because presentation definitions, there's a lot of properties within it and they're important, but for the purpose of this presentation today, I'm just gonna highlight the parts that I think are super important. And then Tanya, if you could just put the link to our guide. So we have like a massive presentation definition guide on our website and it goes through it in great detail and there's different examples of presentation definitions. So like I implore you on your spare time to go through that. And if we have time at the end and anybody's curious, I can go through it then too. But okay, so the parts that I think are super, super important for this exchange, this presentation exchange flow that we're gonna go through is path. You see how that one is highlighted. And with path, what that's essentially saying is in your verifiable credential, where it says the credential subject, I'm looking for it to have a degree. And then when you go down to pattern, the second one that's highlighted, I want that degree to either be an engineering degree, a computer degree, a cyber degree, or a security degree. So this presentation definition, again, is saying in your verifiable credential that you give me, it needs to be able to tell me that you have one of these degrees, one of those 4 degrees, engineering, computer, cyber, or security. And then the idea is just like, this is a degree verification presentation definition. Next one, please. Okay, so the flow, there's 4 main parts of the presentation exchange flow, technically 5. So the first one is selecting credentials. So your wallet will, so first they'll get the presentation definition that says, this is what I'm looking for. Does she have or does he have any credentials that satisfy this? So we'll start with selecting some credentials and then it'll double check and say, okay, it'll satisfy those presentation definitions. It'll make sure these verifiable credentials satisfy the presentation definition. That's step 2. Step 3 is that it'll create that presentation. So it'll take whether it needs 1 to 5, it doesn't matter how many verifiable credentials that you need. It'll take all of those VCs that are necessary and it'll put it in a presentation for you. And then it'll double check it again just to make sure it'll validate the presentation submission and make sure like we're not giving more information than we need to. And that's the privacy preserving that I talked about earlier. And then the 5th one is that it actually like creates it and like sends it off. Next, please. Okay, so let's get into the code. Tanya, if you can switch screens that I'm sharing, that'd be nice. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's get into the code and see like, how does this work? Let's like dive into it. Okay, So line 1, I'm showing you like how you would import it. So you'd want to import presentation exchange and verifiable presentation from the credentials SDK, sorry, blanking. Okay. And then also you'd want to do verifiable credential if you want to create a credential. I just want to show you guys, but for the purpose of the exchange, you only need to import these 2. But I want to show you guys how we're going to create a credential. Just one of them. We're going to use 2, but I'm just going to show you one. Okay, so you would do verifiable credential.create. You'll say the type. You don't have to say the type of credential, but I think it's beneficial. So you could say this is an employment credential. The issuer is my employer, and I'm the subject. So this would be my DID. So my decentralized identifier that I talked about earlier. They're issuing it to me, and then they're adding an expiration date. And an expiration date doesn't have to be there. This is probably just like a contract type of position if it has an expiration date. And then employment status, I'm employed. So now over here is how we'll sign it. And this is how I talked about earlier about how it's tamper evident and you want it, so it's tamper evident when it's signed. So it's cryptographically signed with my public and private keys. And I call them like the magic keys because it just makes sure it's all secure. No one's messing with it. What's in there is going to stay what's in there. And then it's tamper evident because you kind of can see like if there's been any changes to it. So this is how you would sign it. And then when you sign it, you'll end up with a JSON web token. This is what it looks like. It's just a super long string. And I think it would be pretty cool if we actually plug it into, so this is jwt.io, just so you guys can see that this JSON web token is exactly what we created. So under type, you can see that it's the employment credential. Is this seems enough for you guys? Okay. You can see that it's the employment credential. And then under credential subject, we have my decentralized identifier. It's super long, ignore that. But this is what we care about. This is the claim. So in the verifiable credential that we created, we said that the employment status is employed. That's the claim that is being made for me. And that's accurate. So yes. Okay. So we have an employment credential and we have assigned name and date of birth credential. And I didn't show you guys the creating of that because it's the same. It's pretty repetitive. But if you want, I can go on that later during the question round. Okay, so for the purpose of us going through this, I created some variables. We have a credentials variable, and that's just housing both of our credentials, our JWT credentials, our JSON web tokens. And then selected credentials is just that array of credentials. And then for the user, your wallet would already have this for you, but this is us just creating a decentralized identifier for myself that my wallet has on me. This is my DID. And I'm calling it the holder DID. Okay, so this is an example of a presentation definition. So this presentation, so in this scenario, I'm applying for a loan. That's like the scenario we're going to go with. So I'm applying for a loan. So at the name, it says loan application employment verification. So what they care about is they want to know, am I employed? So they're looking for, in my credential subject, is there an employment status? Let me zoom a little bit. Is there an employment status? And does it say employed? That's one thing they're looking for. The second thing they're looking for is they want to know my date of birth. They want to basically confirm that I'm me. So in another credential, or it could be the same credential, but obviously, as we saw before, this credential just has a claim of employed. So this will most likely be a separate credential that we had earlier. So it's looking for date of birth and then for it to have like my date of birth. Okay, and then it wants to know my name. So for the purpose of this, my first credential is our employment credential, and our second one, it has my name and it has my date of birth in it. So it's only going to require 2 credentials for this one. But okay, so again, same thing. It's looking for a credential subject. In that, it needs to have name and then the name like a string. It needs to be my name. Okay, so step 1, we're going to select credentials. So we're going to use presentation exchange. And we're going to make sure that we actually just select the credentials that are necessary. So right here, I'm putting selected credentials. Obviously, in your actual wallet, you'll have like, I don't know, like a million of credentials. Who knows? You'll have a lot. So it's going to select credentials. And I'm also going to pass it the presentation definition. And that's what we've already explained here, the presentation definition. So we're going to pass it both of those. If there's any errors, that's when you'll have to like deal with them and figure out what went wrong. And the second one, it feels like a little redundant, but it's just to make sure that nothing went wrong. So the second one is to satisfy presentation definition. So again, we're using presentation exchange, satisfy presentation definition, and we're going to pass it that array of credentials in the presentation definition. And again, here it's just going to check to make sure that the credentials that I've selected actually satisfy this presentation definition, and it has everything they're looking for in that shopping list that we talked about earlier. And then the third step is it's going to actually create that presentation for us. So we're going to use presentation exchange again, create presentation from credentials. And again, we're going to have our selected, we're going to pass it our selected credentials and our presentation definition. So once it's created that presentation, we need to sign it. And that's again to make sure that it has like a security to it. We want to make sure that it's tamper evident and that this credential can't be like messed with, essentially. So when we sign it, we're gonna need the holders did, and we showed you earlier about how let me go up. Okay, yeah. So I showed you earlier about how I created a holder did. Where is it? Okay, here. Okay, so we created our holder did. So here, when we're actually creating our presentation, we need to have our holder did, our selected credentials, and then our presentation result. And that's what we get from creating our presentation. And then we need to validate the submission. I feel like it's like a lot of steps. Okay, then we need to validate our submission just to make sure, again, like this is actually a true form of a presentation, and this is us sending it over to the lender or the verifier. And then now we're signing it. So I said sign a little early, sorry. So now we're signing it. So we've created our presentation. We've validated the submission to make sure, again, it has everything it needs to have and nothing more than what it needs to have. And then we're signing it. So we're passing in the holders did, so with their keys and everything, so that it can cryptographically sign this presentation. So now we have a signed and encoded JSON web token, which is essentially another one of these, this like massive long string. So we have another JSON web token that we can now show to the lender. And now the wallet is done. Like the wallet's done everything that it needs to do. And now we're moving on to like the verifier side or the presentation requester. They could be the same person as I mentioned earlier. So we're going off to them. And the first thing that they're going to do is, okay, they want to verify it. They want to make sure that these are actually verifiable credentials, that this is the information that they've got in this JSON web token is legit. So what they would use is verifiable presentation.verify, and they'll pass in that presentation, the signed JSON web token of our verifiable presentation. We'll pass that into it. And then if there's any like errors, if it failed, if it's not valid, it'll be in like the console log that we have here. And then they can address those errors and like go back to them like this is not right, etc. And then the second thing is they need to evaluate the presentation based on a presentation definition. So the first time they verified, okay, this is a legit verifiable credential for this person, but now I need to evaluate it and make sure that this actually satisfies all the needs that I set out and all the claims that I asked for in my presentation definition. So what we're going to pass to it is a presentation definition, and we're also going to pass to it the presentation result.presentation. And I kind of want to show, Tania, do you mind sharing that second link? So on our, let me just share it real quick. It might be a little hard to read. Sorry, guys. But so we have a guide for create presentation. I just want to show you guys. So within it, we'll have our verifiable credentials, these really long JSON web tokens. And then this is the result. This is the result that it's looking for here. So presentation result.presentation. So this is what it's looking for. So it has your presentation result and it has your presentation. So it has, this is a verifiable presentation. It says this is the submission. We have our employment verification, verifiable credential. We have our date of birth, and we have our name. Okay. Hopefully that didn't confuse anybody. Okay. So once we use this and we send the presentation definition and we send the presentation result.presentation. So actually your presentation of credentials, they're going to get back a response. And we're going to go back to the slides, Tania, if you can share that. And then go over to the last slide because it'll just be easier to see. Go over to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so in this one, the part that's most important with the presentation results is the top line here. Are required credentials present? So a response that you'll get is a response that you'll get is either info, warn, or error. If you get info, it'll look like what we have here. So info it's correct. We got everything we needed from them. It satisfied our presentation definition. They're good to go forward with their loan application. So it'll have under verifiable credential, it'll have the JSON web token for the employment credential. And then under here is where you'll see like at the bottom under value. Wish I could highlight it, can I? Well, maybe you guys can see that. Okay, so at the value, it'll have the employment verification, date of birth verification, and name verification. Now, if instead of it saying info at the top, if it said warn, that means like, wait, hold on, your wallet has given me way too many credentials. And somehow it got past all our million checks that we did, but they gave me a credential that I don't actually need, and it gives me more information about you. So that will be like a little halt. And then error is, okay, no, this is not satisfying our presentation definition. We're not getting all the claims that we need. We need more credentials. And essentially, that's it. Like, that's pretty much the flow. So I'm open if you guys have any questions or if I went over anything too fast. I'm definitely open to that.
Yeah, that was great. That's awesome and very detailed. There are some comments and questions here. So earlier, somebody asked from our Discord, would step 1 be the verifier sending the definition so the holder knows which VCs to select?
Yeah, so step 1 could be, so let me go back. Oh, you can't see my screen anymore. Okay, yeah. So step 1 would be either the verifier or the presentation requester, and they could be the same person sending the presentation definition, like you said, to the holder, which would essentially be your wallet. Your wallet would perform this presentation exchange. So that's correct.
Cool. And then somebody else mentioned, Joseph in chat said that we're building a product on Web5 and more specifically, they mentioned it's a music streaming service just like Spotify, but a lot more better offers for artists. So that's really cool.
Ooh, I love that. That's exciting. You'll have to come and do a show and tell when you have it all together. Show us what you're working on.
And Angie also just asked in chat, what's the last check that you did? I didn't catch the name.
Let's share the slides again. Actually, let's share my screen.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
Okay, so I wanted to show you the example of the result, but let me go to the code so you guys can see it again. Okay, so the last check I did was, so this is on the verifier side, presentation exchange dot evaluate presentation. And this is them just evaluating to make sure like, okay, you've given me this presentation definition. I mean, presentation exchange. I'm getting so tired. You've given me this presentation, which is all your verifiable credentials. Now I want to know, does it actually truly satisfy the presentation definition? And if it does, they will get back an info as a value to our required credentials present, and info would have like all the details, and that means success. Like, we're good. I've gotten everything I needed from you. If not, it would be warning, which means I've gotten too many credentials and I know more about you than I need to know. And then error is like, hold on, this is not satisfying my presentation definition. It doesn't answer all the claims that I asked for. And hopefully that's the one you were talking about.
Great. Next comment from earlier, satisfies presentation definition is great for issuers. Would you like to just comment on why that is?
Yeah, let's go back to it. So this one is good for issuers because it essentially just like lets them know, like, it just makes sure that like this presentation definition does satisfy. I feel like that's just me like repeating the name. But yeah, I agree with that. I think it is great for issuers.
And somebody mentioned earlier, I'll show the link in on the screen in just a moment, but you asked if there is a GitHub for this code. So here is the link for the presentation exchange, for example. We have a whole guide on this along with the presentation definition. So you can go ahead and explore that. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, we can also like share like in GitHub the credentials SDK and stuff, the link to that. But also I can put this together and share it on GitHub so you guys have all the steps laid out if that's helpful. I can do that too. And then I can share it in Discord.
Awesome. Let's see here. Any other questions, anybody?
Anything else? I think that's a good sign. That means I explained a lot.
You definitely went through it very thorough and in a very detailed way. It was hard not to understand. Let's see, somebody's typing. Hank from LinkedIn says, thank you, great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Gerald on Discord also said very clear presentation too.
Yay. Okay, thanks guys. This is my first time doing a presentation like live, so I'm happy that you guys are receptive to it and you like it. I'll take all
Another
feedback too. Like if you have any feedback, I'll take that as well.
question from Angie is, how does the issuer know if the presentation is tampered with or if VCs are expired?
Yeah, so let me go here and show you guys. Let's go to Verifiable Credentials. So right now we don't have it fully like laid out, but there's like a verification check that you can do on a verifiable credential just to see like, okay, is this credential expired? Is it not expired? But then to see if it's tampered with. So when I copied it into the jwt.io website and it showed like, okay, here's all the claims that are in it. If this was changed in any way, like this link, this JWT would no longer be the same. Hold on. Let's see. Let's just say. Do you see how like the string is no longer there? Like it's not the same anymore now that it's been like tampered with. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Hopefully
great answer to the question too. Somebody has a follow-up, Joseph again saying, can we secure identity with TBD's like credentials, essentially VCs and all that?
Can you secure your identity? I mean, you could create like, let me try to understand the question. So you can create a verifiable credential for your identity, kind of like how the passport example that I had. So you can create a verifiable credential that says, this is my name, this is my date of birth, this is my address, this is my social security, all of that in there. But again, with verifiable credentials, there's a big trust layer that's baked into it. So when this gets presented to somebody and they have to verify it, they want to verify that it was issued from a credible source. And not say you're not credible, like, but anybody can say their name is Joseph, So it'd hold more weight if it came from like how Louisiana has their LA wallet. And that's actually Louisiana has created this verifiable credential that states this is their name, this is their et cetera, et cetera. So you could create one, but
yeah. And Angie also mentioned from what you were showing earlier that there's a verify method that can check these things as well.
Really? There's a verify method that will check it. Oh, yes. You're right. So share this link too, so people can also, because it's probably small on my end to share with you guys. Paste that in there. Okay. So yeah. So when you want to like actually verify just verifiable credentials, there is a verifiable credentials.verify. And what it'll do is it'll ensure the presence of like those keys to make sure like this is actually like the algorithm header and the kid, and then it'll resolve the decentralized identifier to make sure that that actual method is in their DID document. Like there's a whole process that it goes through behind the scenes just within that method to make sure that it hasn't been expired. That one I didn't know, that it also checks make sure it's not expired. So look at me learning something new.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
I also did not realize that.
Yeah, I didn't know it's expired, but that's really cool.
Thank you for answering that as well. Joseph had another follow-up asking of, instead of using like Gmail login, for example, maybe using credentials to be able to log in, would that work? And are bots able to create one? Because you mentioned that Spotify, for example, has an issue with bot accounts, and that's a common thing on multiple platforms.
So go back to the first question. Instead of Gmail login, just so you're saying use credentials to log in? I mean, you could, like, I feel like that within your system, you'd have to put your own like security checks in there. But yeah, anybody can create a credential. A bot could create one, honestly, if it wanted to. But again, it wouldn't be held credible, like, because of who it's issued from. So like, say that you want them to log into your site, but they had to have gotten this credential from registering on your site, and it had to have been issued from you. So your would be like the issuer would be yours, the centralized identifier. I hope that answers that question.
That does.
Cool.
Any other questions, anybody? Feel free to answer now or forever hold them until... well, if you have questions after the stream is over, which definitely happens, feel free to join our Discord, discord.gg/TBD. We are all in there. I'm in there. We are happy to answer any questions that you have, help you troubleshoot as you're building with Web5, for example, figuring out what features you need to develop for your use case specifically, anything like that.
Yes, all of that. Great. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I don't see any other questions in chat. So is there anything that you would like to share before we sign off?
No, that's it. Thank you for everyone for like attending and listening and asking good questions. Again, I can share all the code that I have here in like an actual like on GitHub and share the link in Discord so everyone can go through it on their own. And if you like, again, you have any questions, feel free to like ping me in Discord. We actually have a DevRel like app that you can use, and it'll just like notify all of us, and everybody will get to answer your question.
Yeah. And also, you know, thank you, Angie, for the kind comments for the show. Everyone's really loving it. That's awesome. Yeah, so really thank you everybody for joining us today. If you missed any part of the show, don't worry, the stream VOD will be available immediately after the stream ends on our YouTube. And if you didn't get to ask your question again, like I mentioned before, feel free to ask on our Discord and join. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Take
Tania.
care. Yeah. See you. Bye.